So let's get this out of the way first. I'm a healthcare finance consultant. I help hospitals to increase their revenue, hopefully to bring in more money ethically. I've met a lot of physicians over the years. I wouldn't necessarily say I've been friends with any, but I've had a good relationship with a lot of them. And I've had a bad relationship with some of them, as I shared a couple of videos ago. However, as a patient, I don't think I've taken care of myself well enough every single time. Once I get familiar with a physician, then I can usually speak up for myself, but there are times where I have been stupid. And I realize that I've never talked about it on either this channel or my other channel. And I think I want to talk about it on this one because something came up that I saw on LinkedIn earlier today. And I said, oh my goodness, because I knew part of what she was going through, part of. In her instance, she had gone to see a bunch of different doctors because she'd been having trouble with her leg for years. And finally, she found a physician who actually listened to her, someone who didn't take 5 to 10 minutes telling her that it was all in her head or that she needed to go for physical therapy. She actually talked to a doctor who stayed with her for 15 to 20 minutes, did another exam, and found out that she had a tear and that she needed to have knee reconstruction surgery. And that's not necessarily an uncommon thing. There are a lot of physicians who do not necessarily tell you everything you need to know. And sometimes some of them will dismiss you. For instance, it was me just a few months ago where I went to see my doctor because I was having problems in my leg. He sent me for an x-ray and an ultrasound. Didn't show up with anything. That ultrasound was interesting. I hope to never have to do that again. But he didn't find anything. And then he said, if you're still in pain a couple weeks later, you can come back. He was nice enough. I told him what my issue was, but them just saying, well, we couldn't find anything on that, so just take some ibuprofen or acetaminophen, and if you're still in pain a couple weeks later, come see us. What I did instead was I went on Google, found some answers, followed some of that advice, and that took care of the pain. It still took about a week, but that took care of the pain, put me on the right road. But that's simple stuff. What happened is back in February 2019, I had a car accident. It was a hit and run. And my mother was in the car with me. Luckily, Mom turned out to be fine. And initially, I was fine. But after about a couple of months, I started having shoulder pain. And it was getting irritating. And then it was getting worse. My mother had dementia, and I was at the point where I was having to lift her because she was fighting. And it doesn't sound funny to everybody, but for me, I thought at least she's got some spirit, she's feisty, and we'll just talk our way through it. You can sit home and be depressed, or you can find ways to roll with it. So that's what I did. Anyway, I had this shoulder accident and I was in pain, so I finally went to see my regular doctor who sent me to see the surgeon. Luckily, they're in the same building, one floor down, so I go down and I meet the guy. He sets me up for both a regular x-ray, and then I have to go across town for my first MRI. That was weird. I never want to have that again, as well as the other thing. Oh my God. Anyway, when I finally see him again, he mentions that, yes, I can see that you have a problem with a tendon in your shoulder. I'm going to recommend that you go to physical therapy. Now, my first thought at the time was, okay, if I'm going to physical therapy, maybe this is something I can build up and strengthen. Everything will be fine. So I go to physical therapy. It's covered under no fault, which means no money's coming out of my pocket. I go there for about 3 months and nothing. I'm still under a lot of pain. So after 3 months, I go see the surgeon again. I said, yeah, this pain is just not going away. He says, well, we can do cortisone. I said, okay, what's that going to do? Because, I think a lot of us have heard of cortisone. He said, that should help eliminate the pain. If it doesn't, we'll have to do something else. So he sprays my arm with some cooling stuff. He puts the thing in there. I don't feel a thing. And then he says, okay, after a day or two, hopefully this eases the pain. It took the pain away. I'm like, wow, this is great stuff. I've heard a lot of people gripe about these cortisone shots. I was happy. It lasted for about 3 months. Ended up having to go and get another one. Once again, didn't hurt. I got cortisone shots 4 times. The 5th time, I felt the pain. I said, whoa, that didn't feel good at all. He says, yeah, sometimes it starts wearing off when you get to the 4th or 5th shot. He never mentioned that. I had no clue. I'd never thought about looking that up. I just wasn't in pain, and now I'm in pain. He says, yeah, I think we've reached the point where you're going to need this surgery. And I said, well, I'm not sure that I'm necessarily ready yet. I'm still taking care of my mother. It's just me and her. And of all things, this was in October during the pandemic. So I was actually lucky to even get in to see him. He says, you know, you're going to need this done. And you could, you know, really ruin this if you keep going the way you're doing without getting a surgery. And I'm still wondering, wait, what happened back in 2019 when I was going to physical therapy? I was lifting weights and doing all kind of stuff. They weren't as heavy as Mom, but still they were weights. And I never thought to ask the question. So eventually I had the shoulder surgery. And there we go. Now here's the thing. I failed myself all along here. This is the lesson I really want to teach you. For instance, I knew that I had hurt my shoulder. I go in, I get the x-ray, I go across town. Basically it's 20 minutes away. Where I see my doctor, he's right up the street. So I go there, they do this thing, and he says, yep, you know, we can see that you have the problem, you should go to physical therapy. I should have asked at that point, why am I going to physical therapy? Is this going to help me strengthen it? In other words, is this something that I can fix by doing physical therapy? Never thought about asking the questions. And then, like I said, as the pain stayed with me, then he gave the cortisone. And I never thought to ask, okay, what will the cortisone do? Is this a permanent solution? Is this something I'm going to have to do every few months? I never thought to ask that question. I just let him do it. I've been in healthcare 39 years, mainly working with hospitals, sometimes working with physicians, but not really on the medical side, on the finance side. But still, I should have asked these questions. It just never occurred to me to even think about it. And by the time he told me I needed the surgery, it was still about 3 months later before I got it, because we didn't have the COVID shot at the time. So what ended up happening is the COVID shot came early February. I was able to get shots from my mother and for me. And then I had the second shot scheduled on the exact same day of the surgery. At least on that one, I did call the office and say, by the way, I'm scheduled to have have the COVID shot this morning, you know, the same morning as the surgery. Can I go get that first and then come for the surgery? She says, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't even take any of your diabetic medication. You can't take anything coming in here. I'm glad you asked that question. That's one I never even thought about asking until the last minute. So I'm glad I asked that question. I had to reschedule the COVID shot. It was all good. But I just sat there thinking, how come I didn't ask any of those questions? There were things that were in my mind later on, not the same day, but down the road, but still. This is one of those things I want to mention to everyone else. You need to ask those questions. You need to make sure that you are comfortable before you leave. I did either the last video or a couple of videos ago where I talked about this doctor who I decided, okay, I've had a lot of years with this guy. He's a little bit too familiar. He's a little bit too forward. He says some stuff that's troublesome with me. It's time to leave him and to go see someone else. I had the other doctor, by the way. He was my regular doctor, and he was one of those guys who would give me a diagnosis or ideas and everything. Basically, he saw me for 5 minutes all the time. I've been seeing him for close to 20 years. And it just never really occurred to me that he was giving me these quick answers on everything. And I knew why he was doing it, because the physicians, when they work for a physicians group, the idea is see how many patients you can, take care of every hour, because it's all about the numbers. If you can get in as many patients as possible, you bring more money to the organization, to the company. I know that. but I never question any of it. And when it comes down to your health, you deserve to ask those questions. Now, is it possible that you're going to get upcoded? Another video I did down the road here? Yes, that's a possibility. But sometimes you just have to ask those questions. You deserve to have those answers. And at a certain point, if you're asking the questions and you're not getting the answers you need, then you need to get a follow-up. You can always ask for a second opinion. Maybe you don't tell that doctor. Maybe you just make an appointment with someone else. Maybe you call your insurance company and say, I think I need a second opinion. Can I go see another doctor just to find out if it's covered? But we need to remember that. Like I said, I've been in healthcare a good long time on the finance side. And sometimes you just have to be willing to ask those questions. You have to take care of your health. And, I'm going to add this part. It's mainly women and minorities who have the biggest issues. Not the only ones who have the issue, by the way, but a lot of physicians dismiss women and their issues and minorities and their issues. Not usually men, but it does happen. And I just wanted to put that out there. But regardless of who you are, if you're not satisfied with the information you've gotten from your physician, you need to think about asking more questions. You can always ask them later on, by the way. But if you saw the last video where I talked about that $50 thing and you don't want to deal with that, and maybe it hasn't been instituted where you are yet, you might want to start asking those questions earlier. Because no one wants to pay $50 just to ask a question, especially if you're doing it from home. Anyway, that's what I've got for you today. My name is Mitch Mitchell. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you've had this issue, and we will talk later.